Hello, 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 and welcome to FireCircle 2022 Healing Our Systems, offered by Powerhouse. Powerhouse is a community of practice for diverse leaders, change makers, and social impactors ready to walk a path of relational leadership for future generations. My name is Tina Overbury. I'm very happy to be here. I'm the managing director of Powerhouse, and I'm with you today from Nehuelaquam, also known as Bowen Island. I'm grateful to rest, play, and create on the traditional unceded territories of the Squamish people. FireCircle 2022, Healing Our Systems, is a relational leadership gathering across sectors. We're bringing leaders together over a virtual fire to reimagine from within the systems we are in for future generations. Healing Our Systems is the fourth FireCircle event in a series of 10 cross-sector gatherings hosted to advance the 2030 UN SDG agenda of a more sustainable future for all people and the world by 2030. And at the end of the FireCircle, Powerhouse with Impact Arts will be creating and submitting a detailed case for support to give to the various levels of government bodies, labor leaders, and social impact organizations who are in the position to bring forward the changes and reimaginings that we gather through our conversations here with you and at the fire. Today's conversation is a big one, and it's part of our pre-event discussion series to help warm up your mind and imagination for the main event happening online September 22nd to the 24th. Our focus today is healing our health system. I'm joined by my sister in change, Amplify coach with Powerhouse, national speaker and inclusion and team engagement coach and consultant, Kelly Beattie of Conscious Connections. She's our moderator today. And Kelly offers that with a strong understanding of the importance of leadership, engagement, and continuous improvement. She's driven by a passion to help others grow and develop. And she has a firm belief that each individual in their own way wants to be part of something bigger than themselves, that they want to be engaged, that they want to be involved, and they want to be valued. That's Kelly. And I'm going to hand over to you, Kelly, to introduce our incredibly generous conversationalist today. And I'm going to pop out, and then I will pop back in as we close today in about 40 minutes. So over to you, Kelly, and thank you, all our conversationalists, for being here.
Great. Thank you so much, Tina. I am just completely honored to be joining this circle today, situated on Treaty 4 territory in southeast Saskatchewan, which is the traditional lands of the Nahiawak, the Anishinaabe, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and home of the Métis Nation. And I'm honored to be in circle with all of you today as individuals who have been committed to community and to human connection and involved in health. I'd like to take the next couple of minutes just to welcome the guests that are in circle with me today and introduce our audience to each of you just a little bit. And I'm really happy to be again in circle with such insightful change makers. So Mathia is joining us in our circle, bringing with her a background serving as chief of her First Nation. She has been in the Yukon Government Cabinet Office and is now bringing her experience and energy to work for Canada's Indigenous government and Northern communities as chief strategist. She's a disruptor, motivated by community, shared relationships, and knowledge sharing. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Shannon Walters is a respected medical health officer responsible for public health and preventative medicine. As a communicator and bridge walker, she is transforming the collective journey through health with connection, embracing Indigenous and Western views in her leadership. So happy that you could join us today, Shannon. Brian Simmers is CFO and VP with Providence Healthcare. And as a business leader in healthcare, he's not only dedicated to the digital infrastructures involved in providing health informatics, but he's committed to influencing the people and the culture that bring the care to our health. Tina Roosevelt. Tina's own personal journey is an inspiration to so many, as is her dedication as a frontline nurse in healthcare. Her survival of cancer, abuse, and addiction has led her to develop her own life-changing practices. She believes deeply in the human spirit and walks others through their own journey to live well to set their best self free. Hi, Tina. and Margie Seals-Mayrov. Margie is the visionary behind Thought Architects, where she's applying her vast experience in healthcare to helping others create their own radical human revolution and to helping others gain the skills to create change and culture to bring humanity to the workplace. Thank you all for being in circle with me today as we explore healing our healthcare systems. So, as we begin our discussion today, I'm just really curious to hear a little bit more from each of you about what's the most common misconception in your area of work within healthcare right now. I think the last couple of years has brought a lot to light for many of us that have served in the healthcare system. I'm included in that. I spent a great over 20 years in frontline management and healthcare. And while I think that there was a lot of work to be done prior to our pandemic, so much is there now. So, Dr. Shannon, I'm going to ask you to maybe kick us off in our session.
Sure, thanks. So, yeah, you had asked what is one of the most common misconceptions.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, so I started off in my career as a family physician. I am Hulkmeetnam from Staminas First Nation on my mother's side, and Swedish, Hungarian, and Scottish on my father's side. And I returned back to my home territory. So I am joining you from Huitlapnates, which is also known as Maple Bay, one of the traditional village sites within Cowichan territory. But I returned here as a family physician after I finished my training. And it was a real honor, privilege, and challenge to be working in my home community and seeing sometimes fellow family members and other community members. And with using the tools that I had as a family physician to help people heal or keep well. But I became frustrated with the system's focus on sickness rather than wellness. And so I went back to do further training in what is called public health and preventative medicine, and became now here in my home territory a medical health officer, which a lot more people are familiar with after going through the pandemic of what a public health physician does. But as public health and preventative medicine physicians, we are looking at the health system rather than just the healthcare system. And I think there can be a lot of focus on acute care, like hospitals, infrastructure are very important. They're very important for our health. But I think also we need to think of that concept as extending out into our homes, into the waters, the lands, the plants, the animals, the whole area, this whole place I call my home territory. This is in fact our health system. And we need all of it working to the best of its ability. We need to take care of it so it can take care of us. And one of the things I think that drastically showed that to me is during the pandemic, when our worlds became much smaller, we had to stay closer to home. Particularly in my area, I was very grateful that we still had the opportunity to go out and be with the water, to walk amongst the trees, to, go up the mountains, to have that ability to be out and have our emotional, mental, spiritual, physical wellness nurtured by the place that we belong to and belongs to us. So I think that's one of my big things that I speak about, is thinking about the whole places that we live, all our relationships as being the foundation of our health system.
Absolutely. And taking that holistic view. Tina, when you listen to Shannon and you think about this question, being in frontline nursing, what do you see right now as the most common misconception in your areas?
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Shannon. Yeah. For me, what comes to mind as a person, I am mixed Indigenous and European descent, and my journey with alcoholism brought me to really understand the importance of holistic self-care. And nursing is known as a caring profession. What has come up for me, and the pandemic has shed a really strong light on, the nurses are not managing with the shortages, the workloads. And part of what's going on in it is we're known to be a caring profession. So the misconception that I want to convey is that within the profession, the institutions, and the nurses themselves, it's not caring. It's not caring. For example, the institutions do not respect and build in caring outlets. Anyway, there's debriefing is very new and not enough. So there's not built in outlets for nurses so they can decompress and have care for themselves after challenging days. But also within the nurses themselves, I'll own it. I see it. They're not that caring towards each other. And it sounds like it's backwards, and it sounds like maybe it's not the case, but it is. It's culturally built in. The nurses just keep on going, and they're not thinking about each other in a caring way that will fill them up. And I'm trying to explain also that the organizations aren't thinking about what will help fill up and care for the nurses. And I think that's a big part of where there's a lot of room for improvement.
Absolutely. So I think, hearing that we're in an environment of care that does care, but perhaps lacking some of that. Brian, what does that bring to mind for you, being so, ingrained in some of the culture and the people aspect?
Calling in today here from downtown in the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh territory. I didn't know exactly where this conversation was going to go, but I think it's right on the mark. What I was going to say, the common misconception is that we ourselves are not healthy. I joined the healthcare from outside of healthcare just under 4 years ago. And I thought, okay, I'm going to be joining this group of people that are really passionate about health and taking care of themselves and work-life balance and all these amazing things that I thought I was going to learn. And to the contrary, it's what Tina described. Like there is this, there's this commitment, which is beautiful, but to patients, to serve, but it comes at a cost. And I would observe people, not taking holidays at all. Being on holidays but still working, and then the extra shifts and things. And so I like the way you described it, Tina. I mean, like that. There's self-care. I was responsible for people for Providence Health for over a year, and we were putting a lot of thought into wellness for staff, like almost teaching. And going beyond like the simple stuff, like, take care of yourself, take breaks, be mindful. But actually, could you change work? Could you change the environment such that it actually supports your mental wellness, your physical wellness? What would that look like? Like that's a more radical idea, would be to, you want to come to work because it's healing. Because I think the basics have been tried. We've kind of put the Band-Aids on, and it got us this far, but I think now it is structural, and it is kind of the environment.
It is.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead, Tina. Yeah.
I just wanted to add is that the truth is it's almost non-existent.
Yeah, for sure. And I would echo that in my experience. And I love how you frame that, Brian, right? That healthcare is healthy and that there's that misconception out there. And absolutely, we're going to dive into a little bit more about, some of the areas that we can look at changing in a bit of a second. Margie, is there anything that in your area, tell us a little bit about where you're situated and what comes to mind on misconceptions for you?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm really humbled to be with this group. It's amazing the thought power here. And I am calling in from the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, which includes the Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, and Métis Nation Region 3, under Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta, what we also call Calgary. And as I kind of reflect on what everybody has shared, I think back, and this often, I actually have a bit of a chuckle about this, and I shake my head as well in disgust in some ways. But I remember the first ministers meeting in Victoria, and everybody came out saying, we need more money. It was all this like pounding the table in politics and theater saying, we need more money. And everything everyone's describing is not fixed with money. This is not a money problem. This is actually a problem of how people feel. And people feel exhausted. They don't feel cared for. They don't feel supported. And money doesn't actually, putting more of things that we have in place, more staff, more people, more hours, doesn't necessarily fix the underlying issues. We continue to layer on the same things that we've done in the past. Brian's point, you got to look at this entirely differently, I think is accurate. So how instead do we create professional cultures that honor and support each other so that they can be healthy and well? And I think Tina, you talked about how do nurses support nurses, how do physicians support physicians, how do paramedics support paramedics? I know they have one of the highest rates of mental health, suicide, like they're at high risk. So how do we actually create, there aren't enough mental health practitioners in the world, in my mind, to actually help all the folks in healthcare. So how instead do we tap in this untapped potential of people helping each other? Because when you can help each other as professions, that helps strengthen the profession and it helps strengthen you as an individual as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love how you say it's a problem of how people feel, right? And again, coming back to that. And I think, Mithia, when we talk about knowing a little bit about your passion for community and developing that community, what is the misconception you see? And tell us a little bit about where you're joining us from today.
Thank you. Danjay, ING Media Uye, Huan Man Kai EJ, Shan Kajat EJ. Huanlin Kai Zan EJ. My name is Medea Alatini, and I am from Kluwani First Nation in Kluwani Territory in Yukon. I am zooming in or streaming in from Kwanlin Territory, Kwanlin and Ta'an Quechan shared territory here in Whitehorse, Yukon. I am a member of the Crow Clan, and I have been working in COVID coordination with the Yukon First Nations, 14 Yukon First Nations, acting as a liaison between federal, territorial, provincial authorities in healthcare for the past 2 years. So what I'm seeing is it's nothing surprising. It has been an in-depth look. I love that I get to be on this panel with such experienced and just this wealth of knowledge. I think that what we're seeing, what COVID has brought out is this piece of we can enable communities and empower communities to create change. I think there's this misconception that once you go to medical school, you know all and you can heal all, when really it takes that network of community and the connection to land, the connection to place, the connection to your personal well-being that actually transforms health. So what Shannon was saying about that the land provides for you, that is very much how I've grown up. I was just connected to land over the long weekend. We went hunting. I'm like, after a shower, I still smell campfire. So I think there is this healing piece that is missing in our healthcare system. That Western medicine is supposed to be the be all end all that is going to transform us, when I think it's this opportunity to slow down, stop, reconnect, ground yourself, and really look at better ways of doing things. This idea of this is the way it's always been done, this is the best way to do it. I think we need to stop and listen to what is coming through in community. And yeah, I think I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. Thank you for that. And I love how you just, brought us to that moment of what I often term as the power of pause, right? Let's stop. Let's listen. Brian alluded to the fact, and I think, many of us in this circle have done it ourselves. And I recall days of not stopping, those non-holiday times, those just go, 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 that we think is going to make it better, and the detriment that causes. And so looking at in order to provide the best possible health system for care providers to provide care and be cared for themselves, right? I think that that's such the important piece. And so, I love that you've all come back to that. And I really hear you all coming to that holistic piece, right? We have to come back to who are we as a whole and what does the world around us as a whole look like? And so keeping that in mind and thinking about how do we move forward to heal our systems, it will take time. But what is one of the things you personally would change if you could? And I know that you all have the power to make some changes. So what would you like to see change? What needs to be changed most in your mind? Anybody have something they want? Brian, yeah, jump on in.
I have two, but I'll make them real short so I
I
get both
know,
in.
absolutely.
I think it's the budgets themselves. So if because I think from a financial lens, and I understand the way that money gets allocated, and it gets allocated to programs and things and sectors and constituents. I would love to see more focus on outcomes and outputs, like what was generated, not what percentage of the amount went towards long-term care or to fight opioid addiction or and then for us to be able to judge our efforts on those outcomes that we achieved. The other piece kind of again touches on government is as an employer, I have an obligation to ensure that a workplace is safe from harms and is safe from physical harms, mainly, chemicals and, trips and falls. And so all of the OHS is focused on avoiding a hazard or avoiding a condition that's not safe. And I'd love to see more language about, it's an obligation of an employer to create a healthy workplace, like more in the positive sense, not the absence of, and all of the the audits that WorkSafe does and that are to look for things that need to be removed or made safe. But like, what about the creation of structures, things that could make your environment healthy to start with?
Yeah, absolutely. I
Two
love
small
that.
things. I'm sure we can figure it out by the end of this.
For sure. Absolutely. Margie, jump on in.
Well, I'm reflecting on Mathia's comments and then Brian's comments. And I think there's, there's two elements. There's things that we know, there are some things that are pretty technical in nature and that we do have to have in place, like running a code. That's all technical, appropriate. You need to put money towards that. But then there's also things that we don't know. And there's a whole body of work that I think medicine is uncomfortable with not knowing. It's a group of fixers. People come in and they fix problems. And that's why people go into medicine, to make people well, to make people heal. And that technical element fulfills it. But there's a whole other piece of the world and context where there are things that we don't know. And in Western leadership, there's it's an idea called adaptive leadership, recognizing that there's different ways of knowing and being that need to occur in those people, emotional aspects of the things, and were things that we don't necessarily have absolute certainty we can get to a certain context in by taking certain steps. Raising a child is an example. And so I think there's Indigenous ways of knowing and being that actually parallel and connect with that. And so how do we actually take that component as well and overlay that with that concept of adaptive leadership, so we can have multiple ways of being depending on what the situation is, and recognize we can't always fix. Sometimes we just have to be present and listen. And by being present and listening, the right course of action will emerge.
Absolutely. Love
I
that.
think I want to jump in here because in the Yukon we have 11 of the 14 First Nations are self-governing. So when we look at what budget is, it's not as prescriptive. So you get an FTA, here's your dollar amount, you do with this dollar amount what you will. And therefore, First Nation governments have the authority to create programs and services, create the responses that are required, and it's quite empowering. So you get to see a transformational grassroots responses that are transformational and rapid, responsive, adaptive, actually meeting the needs of communities, whether that is providing additional healthcare or childcare services, or providing elder care services, food delivery, whatever it is that is needed by the community at the time, is the governments are able to respond immediately to those needs. I think that that's a game changer, and it's something that I'm hoping can be emulated throughout the rest of Canada. This idea that community does know best, especially First Nation communities, does know best what's required to heal, to build those connections. Like almost every First Nation in the Yukon created some sort of connection to land. So land-based programs where they were incentivizing families to get out on the land. As soon as COVID hit, it was, okay, can we get you some gas for your skidoos? Can we get you some tents? Let's build some programming to get families out as family units out on the land. And those things are healing. Not to say that we weren't hit with the same mental health epidemic that the rest of Canada is facing, the drug overdoses, the toxic drug supply, all the rest of it, which COVID exacerbated. But there's also that other side of it that connected families and created a bit of transformational change, a new way of doing well-being as health systems.
Yeah. I love that. And I was really excited to start to see some things where, you see articles and you see things about doctors prescribing, passes to provincial parks. In some of our area, you can actually go to your local library and get a pass for a day that you don't have to pay for, but gets you into a regional park. So where maybe something is cost prescriptive to a family, you know what, they now start to see having access, and we're starting to see that mindset change, integrating the land. Shannon, what does this bring up for you? What do you feel you see needing to be changed?
What to talk about? What I determined I would talk about is some work I've been really involved with lately around legislation. So I'm really heartened by the opportunity we have here in BC with the passing of the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, and what that means for us collectively as, beings living here for our health and wellness. So I'll just bring up the example of an area that I work with in around drinking water. So water being very, very pertinent to our health. And I'm on Vancouver Island, and over the last number of summers, we've had extreme droughts, which has affected drinking water supplies, plants and animals that depend on rivers flowing throughout the regions. And typically, our Western legislation has been very reactive and not very effective at what's called source protection. So protecting the sources of water that sustain us. And it's because you really have to prove some kind of human health deficit. So it's very anthropocentric, it's very human centered, and it can take quite some time before effects show up as a human health hazard, which is how our public health legislation is written now. But I think one of the incredible opportunities of the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act is that it actually protects our relationships as Indigenous peoples with the waters that sustain us. And that would change the whole way we look at source protection. It would bring in things like consent to be able to use a water source, how conversations around, can we divert a water source? Like, how do the plants and animals weigh into, when we're looking at diverting water for only human use? So I'm working with colleagues within this area, and I just that's an area I feel like there's some tremendous opportunity to really bring forward that it's the relationships we have with each other and with the land, animals, waters, and plants that is the foundation of our health and our security. So I think there's some language change that can happen within the field, but also I think really opportunities for legislative change. So that's an area that I'm excited and really feel like it's one of the ways that I can give back to, the water that's helped sustain myself and my family and my ancestors for generations.
Absolutely love it. And I think, as we hear some hope in that, some hope to start to see some change. And as we think about that, Tina, tell me a little bit about, in the area you're working right now, where do you start to see that hope?
My hope is that our healthcare system will have real functioning well-being centers for all staff to utilize 24/7. Where I'm seeing hope is that COVID has shined a light on the fracture lines of the systems, primarily nursing, a highest percentage of the employees, the workers. That part of it is to feel cared for. It is respect and worth. And as a nurse, I don't feel respected. I don't feel I'm valued. And I speak for myself, but when you look at our salaries, it's insulting in ways when you compare to police, firefighters, and teachers. The pandemic pay that was like they're just throwing bones to the nursing profession again and again and again. And I think that because we're supporting it and it is a ripple effect and a domino effect, a shortage of nurses, now we shut down ICU beds. And then it just ripples from there. And now people aren't getting surgery. So it keeps expanding further out where individuals are being impacted on all levels. And I think that we need to back to the care for the nurses and respect them. And also care for all employees by offering real well-being centers. And as well, the last piece of the well-being center that means a lot to me is part of the Indigenous medicine wheel. The spiritual component of well-being has been absent in our healthcare systems, and it's starting to surface. They're actually building meditation centers in spiritual areas in new hospitals. But I think that there could be some incorporating of that would support feeling cared for and that holding space for care amongst all of us. Thank you.
Absolutely. Love that. That holding space for care is absolutely vital. And you're right. So many fractures have been brought to light. Where do the rest of you, where do you find hope working in your sector right now? Go ahead, Brian. Yeah, just pop on in.
Sorry, there's so many thoughts, not enough time here.
I know, right?
Like there's a number of things. The first is that it is broken, and that's causing a real need to look at it. We can't just do the things we've been doing before. You mentioned before, like someone mentioned, throwing money at it. We can't just hire our way out of this problem because there aren't people to find. And like for the first time, we're seeing like nursing classes, people are stepping out of those classes before they finish them. So there's a choice factor too, affecting the supply and our ability to just kind of do what we've always done, just hire and post. And so I think that's it. There's also a leadership change. There's a generational shift. I think with COVID, there's a number of leaders that have stepped kind of out, and there's an opportunity for some new folks to come in. And then, mentioned spaces. So, I mean, we are building the new St. Paul's Hospital on an 18-acre campus. It is the first kind of from the ground up build in Canada in a very long time. And one of the pieces that, we are working closely with the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh is to create an Indigenous Welcome and Wellness Center as part of that campus. So an actual standalone facility. And there's a knock-on effect, like of that, and then throughout the facility, the spaces, the walk, there's like an interpretive walk around the facility, the materials, all those things. So it's not everything. Like I definitely don't think a building can solve this, but we have an opportunity. We have this like green field. So that gives me hope too.
That's fabulous to hear, right? Building that opportunity to connect into that holistic view and have that spiritual connection to the earth. Margie, yeah.
Well, I love the systems thinking that's come out of this. I mean,
Yeah.
Shannon's touched on it, Tina's touched on it. And if we actually think about, just like we think about our environment and how we're connected to our environment as a system, so we think of the health system in the same way, we can actually create positive disturbance in it, where it starts to shift. And one thing, I see hope in that people are now talking about wellness in healthcare. It used to be something you didn't talk about. You sucked it up, you continued, and you went on. And so all of a sudden, healthcare practitioners are now saying, no, 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 hold on, I'm not okay. And if I'm not okay, the health system's not okay, because the health system is only as healthy as the people who are in it. And so there's starting to change, there's this conversation changing, and there's some wonderful natural things. We just actually got some small grants. They're not huge, it's not a huge amount of money, but to teach coaching skills to physicians so they can coach each other. After a bad day, just as Tina was saying, how do you have those debriefs? So if you have a bad day, how do you debrief with each other in a way that, again, you can't fix it, but you can hold space for somebody? And by simply talking about it, often that helps relieve the anxiety and the stress, and finding the self-directedness and self-resourcefulness to be able to manage. So I think there's some little pockets where we have this potential to do some really interesting work and shift that system, but we have to look at it as a system.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. Yeah, hop in, Mathia.
Yay. I so see all these linkages from all the conversations. It's great. That comment about the medicine wheel and integrating that. Right now in the Yukon, we are at a point where the healthcare system they've done an analysis, they know it's broken. How can it be done better? The idea is to have a wellness Yukon. So a healthcare system that brings Indigenous population healthcare, so think of NIHB programming, et cetera, up to the same standard as the regular Yukon healthcare system. So we're actually developing legislation. We're looking at developing the systems that would incorporate a Indigenous way of knowing, doing, and being. So we call that good, being good. And that is Wellness Yukon. So we're at this piece of, it's almost like a precipice. We either jump on as Indigenous people and we participate and we influence how healthcare can be delivered. And for me, that is that piece about balance. And it's, so when we look at the medicine wheel, you can't have a wheel if it's out of balance. And we see so much disease, and that dis-ease comes from being out of balance. So how do we build up that spirituality? Mm-hmm. How do we build up the that connection to land, the connection to inner well-being, so that people can start to heal themselves? Because that ripple effect of individual well-being affects family well-being, affects community well-being, affects our territory well-being. So it's exciting to hear all of the words, and I'm like, that's stuff that's been floating around in my head as well. So it's nice to be validated, or to be in a place where I feel like we're on the right path in being able to change a system that needs to serve all of us better.
Absolutely. And I think I've heard you say, it is about that holistic, it is about that connection, it is about relationships, and it's about taking a different approach to be proactive instead of reactive, and to have that flexibility that it's not so prescriptive, right? And to think a little bit differently. And so I so appreciate that. As we start to wrap our discussion and we start to close this, and I think the six of us could stay here for hours and hours and have continued, and I hope we will all continue this conversation as we move into the FireCircle and even beyond from there, because there's such intuitive thought here that needs to continue to take place in discussion. But as we close, what do you hope that our viewers are leaving with as we work to heal our systems? So our audience that's going to watch this in the upcoming days and weeks and into the circle, what do you hope they're leaving with to heal our systems? Anyone want to start us off? Yeah.
I'm a big fan of, for every behavior action, there's a thought that precedes it. And so if you can actually influence the thinking, you're more likely to influence the behavior. And so I'm hopeful that people will just come away with one or two different thoughts that then influence them, again, that ripple effect in a number of actions they take down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. Shannon, yeah, hop in.
Yeah, I would say, like, I've just even being part of this panel has made me more hopeful. And just that there's such a thread amongst all of us speaking to the incredible power of incorporating Indigenous practices into what we build. And just made me think of a little story of we've been talking about Indigenous perspectives on health and healing. When I was at the First Nations Health Authority, we built this perspective on health and wellness, and it was a visual depiction. And I had a human being in the center, a number of circles, and then people holding hands around the outside. And I was presenting at a conference, and my 3-year-old daughter was with me. And she's like, "Oh, Mom, bring up that picture with me in it." And I was like, "Oh, I don't have a picture of you." And I was like, "Okay, come and look. Where are you?" And she pointed to something I'd never seen before. The person at the top of the circle was actually a little person. And she's like, "Well, there's me, and there's you and Daddy on either side of me holding my hands." And I was like, I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is the way we're building things." And if my 3-year-old can see herself like as integral to that, like, I really think, this way of building things is, I have so much more hope, because like a 3-year-old sees themselves as integral to all of that. So I really hope people see, the incredible potential of how viewing things in this different way brings us all in together, caring for each other.
Oh, I absolutely love that. And I agree. We also need to be looking at where are youth and starting that discussion today at the age of 3 and the age of 10 and 12, not just when we think that they can understand, because they understand a lot more, and they're the future of tomorrow, and to bring them in today to discussion is huge. Love that. Tina?
So I have my quick hope. My final hope for this is that people viewing will feel the energy and passion in the conversation, to feel and know that caring change can happen.
Mm. Absolutely. Thank you.
And I'm just going to add that if you know it and you feel it, you can be that change. Like, you can. The system requires allies. It don't have to be Indigenous to be a part of this. I think it is a very integral part of people that need to connect to place, to land, to community. So being an ally means just being authentic to yourself, and knowing that your voice, no matter, you don't have to be a healthcare system professional, because I'm not, but adding your voice to the change and your expertise to the change it's a game changer. I love it.
Absolutely love that. Brian?
My message would be, staying healthy is your obligation. The system is not designed to keep you healthy. It's designed to support you when you fall or you're failing, and that's an obligation. And the way in which you do it is going to be different for each person, but it is your own obligation, and that's a starting point. And we talked about ripples, and I think there could be a nice ripple there. The more people start understanding that and not being angry that the system's not doing enough for them, it's when they haven't done anything for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. And I've always been such a proponent of, you have to be your own advocate, and your voice matters. Your voice really matters. And so I just want to say, Tina's joined us back in, and we're just wrapping up. Thank you all. Thank you all for your tremendous insight, and for joining us in Circle today, as we perhaps open the discussion for some, as it's a continued discussion for others, and to work towards being that voice for change and to heal our health system. So thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. I just want to encourage us just to take a breath together, to close this circle consciously, knowing we're all in co-creation of the system we're in. Thank you so much for the rich conversation. Some of you got a jet, so if you gotta get out, drop out of the stream, I am gonna close with a few words about Powerhouse. And Mathia, I know you've got another meeting to go to, so if you gotta go, please do. But I'll be in touch with each of you, and thank you for your contribution, for being here. I'm just gonna.
Thank you.
Whew. Today's FireCircle pre-conversation is part of our pre-event discussion series to help warm up your mind and imagination for the main event happening online September 22nd to the 24th. I have no doubt that this conversation has fired you up as someone who has your own opinions, as you as a viewer, right? You have your own opinions and your own ideas about the health system. So if that is you, please respond wherever you are watching this. Maybe you're watching this on YouTube. Maybe you've got this direct in your inbox and you can just reply. We are collecting all of the data from these recordings and compiling them into a case for support that we are forwarding to the various levels of government bodies, labor leaders, and social impact organizations who are in the position to bring forward the changes and reimaginings that we're gathering here. FireCircle 2022, Healing Our Systems, is a relational leadership gathering across sectors, bringing leaders together over a virtual fire to reimagine from within the systems that we are in for future generations. We're so excited to be with you at our FireCircle because your voice, your imaginings, your inquiries, and your contribution to the collective future we're co-creating together matters. At Powerhouse, we activate and amplify the relational work of changemakers. We are a community of practice for leaders and a platform committed to co-creating an interconnected world. We want you to join us at the Fire. You can come to powerhouse.com and you'll find all the information that you need. I want to thank our leaders today, Dr. Shannon Waters, Margie Sills Merov, Brian Simmers, Tina Roosevelt, and Mathia Alatini. And thank you to you, my sister in change at Powerhouse, our moderator, Kelly Beatty. Thank you for the container that you hold, the listening that you offer, and the connections that you create. Thank you to our viewers, to you watching. I'm Tina Overbury. I'm the managing director of Powerhouse, and I'm very grateful to have had this conversation with you. And we'll see you in the house of Powerhouse, and we'll see you at the Fire at powerhouse.com. Thank you for being with us today, everyone. We'll see you at the Fire.